really enjoy visiting Arizona. I wish I could be there in person, but hey, the joys of electronics and all the stuff that I know absolutely nothing about has come to my rescue. Yeah, it's good to be back in Arizona. I think one of the things that was going through my head when I suggested a topic for this evening was to embrace some of the recovery patterns from codependency, of codependency. And of course, I looked at them online and got completely overwhelmed and did what happens to me when I go into panic. I thought I'll never get through that whole 5 patterns in the time that I'm allotted. And of course, when you ask the question, and I've learned to ask questions rather than just play around in my own head. When I asked the question of Rona and John, they very kindly said, just pick out what you feel is appropriate to you. I'm astounded that after many, many years in recovery practice in a 12-step recovery program, that when my head gets into a confused place, my emotions immediately start to try to overwhelm me. And it was like, wow, even after all these years, this panic thing, and I can see it in the patterns so clearly. And the first sort of pattern I want to sort of touch on, which for me is absolutely crucial, is low self-esteem. In my codependency, I can see now, having embraced the program, especially step 4, honestly, I began to see that it was all about protection. It was all about protecting my vulnerability, my idea that I had to be all things to all people in order to be accepted. That I thought, I really did think that the person that other people wanted to be was of more value than the person that I am and have become. I love the CoDA literature, especially that it states clearly in the Green Book. This is a program about learning to love the self. And for me, the low self-esteem was absolutely horrendous because it kept me trapped in a place whereby I had to keep inventing characters that weren't real, trying to impress, trying to find a way of being accepted by others. That is a lonely, lonely place to be. I can still feel it from time to time, but because I have the CoDA program and I have the steps, I can spot it very, very quickly. And if there's one thing that CoDA asks me to develop that's very important, is authenticity. To just be myself. Who I am is all that I am. What I have become as a result of the 12-step recovery program and the support of other fellowship members. And it says, I'll give the negative first. I judge what I think, say, or do harshly as never good enough. I love the antidote to this. In recovery, I accept myself as I am, choosing personal progress rather than perfection. That's where the problem lay. I thought I had to be perfect in order to be accepted, to be loved, to be valued, to be given a place in life and humanity. And I carried that trait for such a long time. And it always brought on a sense of loneliness, a sense of separation, a sense that somehow or other I was different. Now, that's amazing egocentricity. I am different from the rest of the human race. And finding myself in that horrendous place, absolutely horrendous place, of feeling the depth of that, I came up with some crazy ideas. I thought that my mother had an affair with my uncle, and that's why my alcoholic, narcissistic, very violent father took it out on me. That was crazy. That was based on he looks like his Uncle Sam. So my mother must have had a relationship with my uncle, and that's why my father doesn't like me. I would trawl through trying to get some kind of understanding. But the reality was it just pushed me back. And the other one I came up to, and it was 1950s, and there was a lot about UFOs and visiting aliens and all sorts. And I thought, maybe I'm an alien. I really did think that. Maybe I'm an alien. Didn't know what an alien was, but I thought I might be one anyway. Trying so hard to fit in and compromised myself on many, many occasions. I can now see with 2020 vision, which is what hindsight gives me and the program gives me. And I see just a young man, a child, and then a young man, and then a grown man stuck in this crazy fairground. It was just bouncing off the walls. Music was loud all the time, the flashing lights. And I know this is not Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was part of my experience. I found alcohol. No, I did not find. I was led to Alcoholics Anonymous 51 years ago. And I was introduced to the idea that I wasn't different. And the process of identification in all of the fellowships, and I love it particularly in CoDA because it has an emotional content in the sharing. And in CoDA, I realised that I'm not different. I'm just a human being who really got very, very screwed up. And now I'm learning to accept myself just as I am. I don't try to impress anyone anymore. What you see is what you get. This is me, warts and all. And I'm at peace with that. And being at peace with that allows me to take the focus off myself and allows me to really listen to other people when they're talking and give them the opportunity to express their fears and their frustrations. It ties in very much with I seek recognition and praise to overcome feelings less than. In recovery, I feel close to others, recognizing recognition and praise from others do not determine my value. If someone gave me a compliment, I had to give them at least 2 reasons why I didn't deserve it. I thought that was humility. It wasn't, it was self-abuse. Now if someone gives me a compliment, I just say thank you. Thank you is enough to be able to move into that space where I know that I am a product of a program supported by a fellowship. It's not egocentric. I didn't change myself. Our program and our blue book states it very, very clearly. I cannot change myself. I cannot remove my own defects of character. Step 6 and 7 are so precious to me. What is a shortcoming? I didn't have a clue. It's just where I fall short. It's where my attitudes to life and my behaviours kept pressing me into a place of denial and lack of understanding. And again, CoDA comes to the rescue and it tells me very, very simply that if I continue to take inventory and I keep short accounts, step 10, very precious to me, I don't get overwhelmed with the questions. I was sharing with a friend just earlier on today how the head kicks in, you're not good enough, nobody loves you. It still comes back even after all these years. I call the illness the beastie. Good Scottish word. And I'll tell you, when the beastie comes, thankfully now I can spot it for the liar and the fraud that it is. To be able to understand that what CoDA has given me is the ability to identify, and that brings a sense of right size. I'm not greater. I'm not lesser. I'm just a human being on this earth. And when you think about it, at 72 years of age, life is very short. You only get that with age, you realise how quickly it's passed. So this low self-esteem thing, I need to find ways, and it's all in the 12 steps, and it's all in listening to my fellows sharing. I get clues here and clues there about how to see it for what it is. But what it's basically saying to me, Charlie, is you don't have to live in that horrendous place, denying yourself the capacity to be a human being amongst other human beings. You're not as you were. You can hold your head up, no greater, no lesser, and just be. Low self-esteem obviously feeds into that. And discovering that low self-esteem was a product of obesity. It was the illness. Not only could I not enjoy any of my own achievements, I never saw any anyway, I couldn't enjoy other people's achievements. Jealousy. Why are they all right? Why am I not all right? It says, I am embarrassed to receive recognition, praise, and gifts. As I said, I would have to sort of balance that out with a few defects to tell them just that I'm quite a humble guy. But it goes deeper than that. Sense of not having a value of who I am and what I am. In recovery, that changes. That moves into a place where I begin to value my own thinking, feelings, and decisions. And I begin to find confidence in myself. Even if I find out that I've been wrong, I can still give myself a pat on the back and say, well, you did the best with what you had, Charlie. You only have what you have. More will be revealed as time goes on. And it certainly has been revealed, that's for sure. So I don't need to seek recognition anymore. And I don't have to tell people about my defects if they give me any praise. I think perhaps this idea of value, I hear it so regularly at meetings, and obviously I won't share anyone else's share, but one that I hear generally is, and it moves into the compliance. I'm taking all sorts of garbage from all sorts of people because I don't think I am enough. But for me, there was a conflict in that. Going through the program as I'm beginning to build just a tiny bit at first of self-love and self-acceptance, and being able to embrace the idea that I am on my own journey and I don't have to be the same as everyone else. That I have the freedom. Even if I'm making a mistake, I can learn from a mistake. I'm being taught all of the time, always like keep getting back to step 10, keep short accounts. And finding my way into that place, which was absolutely incredible. Complying to other people in order to be accepted by other people was really paper thin. There was no substance in that. And the compliance pattern that says, I am committed to my personal and emotional safety. I am able to leave situations that feel threatening to me. What a relief it was when I found out I wasn't alone and I heard CoDA members at meetings talking about that vulnerability, that feeling unsafe, that being in a position where they would basically capitulate to other people who were controlling and bullying, and I would comply. I've managed to find a place where I share it quite often at my home group. I've learned the power of the positive no. That is not acceptable to me. And some of the reactions that I get from people when I put my hand up, that is not acceptable to me. And some of the reactions are really quite emotionally and verbally violent. Because in a sense, just by putting my hand up and saying, no, that is not acceptable to me, it shines a light on the other person. It takes courage to do that, especially when there's a bit of panic going on and the emotions are bouncing around, getting tight in the gut. But I've had to practice it, and I will not accept the unacceptable. And that's backed up by the fact that I try very hard not to put people in positions where they find that what I'm saying is unacceptable. Love and tolerance is our code. But how can I love other people and be tolerant of other people if I don't love myself? And I'm not being tolerant of myself. Of course I have flaws. Everybody has flaws. That's part of the human condition. I used to think that was a curse and it was sin and it was being judged and all sorts of it. See it very differently today. It's in my weakness that the higher power strength is made manifest. So I'm quite happy to recognise that I can't get life right all day, every day. But I don't have to get a hammer out and beat myself on the head. I'm on a learning journey. Recently in another fellowship I'm in, there's loads of young people coming in and they're very, very damaged. And we were talking about step 11 a couple of weeks ago. And it was such a joy. I could identify so much in where different ones were in that journey. And it was like, I don't know what God's will is for me. And I usually sort of throw a kind of jocular thing and I just make like that. I say, well, I have discovered that seeking knowledge of God's will for me is not higher power. Today, will I put on blue socks or red socks? Higher power doesn't care what socks I put on. Will I turn left or will I turn right? That's emotional bondage. What I've discovered in step 11, and it really applies in CoDA, it's not so much about, that's from my experience, it's not so much about what the higher power wants me to do, it's about what the higher power wants me to be. And I share with these youngsters, I'm really going through a hard time. I say, don't worry, it's part of the journey. What do you mean it's part of the journey? You're being shaped. You're being molded. What do you mean I'm being molded? It's terrible. Yeah, you're being molded. What am I being molded for? I've been molded for step 12. And able to sit down with people that are very damaged, just like yourself. And you will have empathy, and you will have compassion, and you may even have some love for them. And that starts to dissipate the critical head, oh, they should be further on by now, they've got 6 months under their belt, or they shouldn't be behaving that way. For someone who hated being controlled, when that part of the beastie turns up, and I feel that somehow or other I have to control other people because in some distorted way I think I am responsible for fixing other people, I can spot that nonsense very, very quickly. And that's so important for me that I spot it again. Step 10, I keep coming back to it. I cannot control other people. Our 12 steps kick off with it. Admitted we were powerless over others. I am not responsible for another human's attitudes, behaviours, decisions, ways of thinking, their past, their present, or what might be their future. What I am now is a curious observer. I'll listen to what they share. And if they keep coming back to meetings, I identify with their struggles. And then the great joy is you begin to see them getting a breakthrough. And they move out of the place of complying to the illness, not just people, it's complying to the illness, and moving into a place of freedom where they're making positive choices to learn to love the self. And when I hear that, I just smile inside. Sometimes I can't help it. It breaks out in my face. It's like, oh, wow, how far have you come? If I didn't go to meetings, I would never see these miracles of change. I get pulled up sometimes when I talk about miracles. And with no disrespect whatsoever, I know people have got their own religious beliefs or not. I'm not going into that controversy. I've learned how to live my life. But a miracle is a transformation that does not happen without some kind of intervention. And for me, the 12 steps are miraculous because they are 12 interventions that take me and my broken psyche, my broken emotions, my drivenness with 100 forms of fear, self-seeking and self-delusion. And it throws a spotlight into what it is that's crushing me inside. No wonder I couldn't love the self. Self-loathing, big part of where I was in my journey. But that miracle is available every day when I get up. I can make that decision again based on I am powerless over others, based on I need restored to right thinking, to sanity. And I turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand it. And to be honest with you, if I understood God, I would be God. So understanding even that word, I've had to sort of rearrange in order to bring it into a place that makes sense to me. So I come to a place I don't have to understand God. What a liberation that is for a controller, eh? I just have to know that there is something which is loving, and that love so often is expressed through my fellows at meetings. I hear it when someone's hurting and others are trying to reach out to them, maybe in a codependent way, but they'll learn. And they learn how to embrace other people who have pain without feeling discomfort. And if that's not a miracle, if that's not an intervention, I don't know what is. I have never heard a voice from heaven saying, Charlie, this is me calling. But I do get the intuitive and inspirational thought. And it opens me up to the idea that somehow or other this God consciousness is so precious. It's so precious. And I don't have to figure it out. First year or so in recovery in another fellowship, I spent all of my time trying to figure out who, what, where, and why this higher power was. But I had to go through that process in order to realise how futile, for me, that process would be. It was not about understanding. It was about trust. It was about faith. It was about creating the space to begin to see the changes that were taken in my life and in the lives of other people. So this whole thing about the patterns and what manifests from them, I love this one. It's in the avoidance category. Now that was me in early recovery. Oh dear, I didn't want to get near the emotional stuff. It was too painful. But by the grace of whatever the higher power turns out to be, eventually I was hurting very, very deeply, and I could feel it. There was a knot in my stomach. I was talking to senior doctor. I've got a lot of health issues, and they found another one, and they did all sorts of scans and tests and all the rest of it. And it's a thing called a AAA. No, I'm not a doctor or a scientist. It's something to do with the aorta artery, which is within between the ribs, and it has become extended. It's blown up. And joy of joys, they said, unfortunately, because of all your other issues and medical things, Mr. Steele, we can't operate on you. I said, well, what's that about? You can't operate on me? He said, can't you? You probably wouldn't survive the surgery. I said, what happened? He says, well, it could burst at any moment. We might have to take your driving license off you. And I went into a panic. I need my meetings to be involved in my fellowship and other things. He says, but the good news is it might never burst and you could die somewhere up the line. And I come away and the panic started. It started to really bite in the avoidance about what I've. And oh my goodness, I went round and round in circles. And then I realised it's the truth that sets you free, Charlie. These people were just telling you the truth. Now, for a while, I've been living in a place of happiness and joy and freedom. It could have snapped away from me in that moment. I could have slipped into self-pity. I could have avoided the reality of the situation by going and sitting in the dark corner again. And I haven't. But that comes with experience, strength, and hope. It doesn't come any other way. There's not a book on how to get emotionally well, but there are 12 steps that bring it about as a reality. And it's been great. I get some friends phoning up, oh, Charlie, how do you went well? Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame for you. I said, no shame. It's just the unfolding of my journey. Within myself, I am happy, joyous, and free. I have never been more mentally, spiritually, emotionally well. I'm just travelling through on this body thing. But the essence that has developed over time through the 12-step journey, through the uncovering, the discovering, the discarding, the letting go, the embracing of other ideas, being involved, especially in step 12, even if that's only 10 minutes at the end of a meeting speaking to a newcomer, hopefully giving them a wee bit of hope and a bit of encouragement. Everything that I embrace in this program has positive benefits. I don't have to live in that low self-esteem. I don't have to live in that avoidance. I don't have to get stuck in that horrible place of trying to control everything and everybody somehow or other that I'm making myself and other people safe. And I'll finish on this. I have to allow other people to go through their pain because that's their journey and that's where they will learn from. Just as I had to go through my pain, and there were many people who tried to rescue me from it. Oh, Charlie, you should do this. Some were a bit more subtle about it. Could I suggest that you do this? You know, and that's okay, but ultimately I am responsible for me and for my journey and how it unfolds. I'm the one that has to decide whether I put on red socks or blue socks. But it really is more about who am I? What am I? Where am I in my journey? And it's got simpler as time goes on. And I really would suggest to anyone who's new to CoDA, please consider, it's your consideration, please consider coming back. The more you come, the more you will learn. The more the fog will lift, the more the confusion will dissipate. The more that you might see, as I have seen, that there was a person in need of healing, a person in need of love, a person in need of self-acceptance, a person who is able to say no. And that is an amazing transformation from that codependent, bewildered soul. It's great to be with you guys. I really wish you all well.